Hi, my name is Alysha Farling, and this is my show, So Damp, Them Three Bellies Grew a Whole Damn World. This is my third solo show, and first in Canada and in my hometown. So I guess I'll just tell you a little bit about where the miniatures come from, and then just talk to you about this project, and anything else that comes to mind. So for me, lots of the inspiration comes from being a kid, an only child, and I grew up just playing in my backyard a lot. And when I would be there, there's always like this specific spot that I would go to, and I'd play by these rocks that were covered in this moss, and I would always create these miniature worlds. And for me, being there, like I would shrink. There was like this magic in this one spot. So when I create these kind of worlds, I feel like I'm going back to those moments of play. And I feel like, and I don't know if this makes any sense, but I feel like when I'm creating these worlds, it's like me having a conversation with my young self. So it's like adult self and child self sort of playing and having this little like, weird conversation. So yeah, that's where the love of the miniatures comes from. And I also grew up watching lots of movies. There's like The Secret of Nim and The Rescuers Down Under, and stories like Thumbelina and The Borrowers. I've just always drawn to those. So that's where that comes from. This project specifically, I did while I was the artist in residence at Camosun. And it's so funny because I just got here from Montreal, and I had such a specific idea that I was going to work on. And it was this idea of making a world that was stuck in snow, and it was this bringing home the cold is what I called it. But when I got here, everything's so wet and so alive and so juicy that I just couldn't do that. I couldn't even think about snow. So I just started building. And this is the world that came from that. And for me, it really is a reflection of that transition from Montreal to Victoria. And sort of everything feels a little like it's shifting or a little wonky or a little off, like out of balance. And I think that makes a lot of sense for right now. I'm sort of navigating my way back into my hometown and into this new sort of art world. So yeah, I feel like it's really reflective of the transition to here. For this project, I asked for people to bring me bits, and that's what I call all the little pieces that I have. And this is the first time I'd ever done that, because I've always been a collector. So when I was young, I collected like stamps and coins, and I had a horrible collection of rocks that all looked the same, and bottles even. And then as I've grown up, my collection has turned into pieces from traveling or things I find on the side of the road or whatever. And I did a residency in Argentina almost 2 years ago. And for that project, I decided I was going to collect as I explored the city. As a way to get to see the city, I would collect bits on my travels. And that process really stuck with me. So that's how I come up with all these little bits, is from my day-to-day. So with this project, I invited the people from Camosun and anybody else to bring me stuff. So there's all the found bits that I have mixed in with all the bits that people brought me. And I really feel like with this, it's like my story weaving with other people's stories, if that makes any sense. And this really feels like I've mapped my day-to-day. Like I can go through everything. This little bit right here is the first meal that I had back with my dad. He cooked salmon. And I just started in the studio. I eat a lot of popcorn, and now it's my new favorite thing to work with is insulation foam and popcorn together. I love that combination. I'm trying to think if there's other things that I can point out. Yeah, we've got this is a student's dreadlock that she brought in. There's something else too about like using these found objects. I always loved when I was a kid watching those movies with all the the little worlds. I loved when there was bits that I could recognize. So like, specifically, I think it was a thimble. Is that what they're called? A thimble? And I loved that idea of what would small beings use from our world. And so like the cigarette butts I think it's so funny because there's cigarette butts everywhere. So I always picture like a little being, I don't know what kind of being, collecting all the butts and then building this world. And for me too, using stuff like say cigarette butts or beer caps or things that kids wouldn't use, that brings back the sort of conversation between adult self and child self, because these things from a world that a kid wouldn't use. Yeah, let's see. There's the shrimp tails. That was from a lunch that I had at work with my stepsister. And even while I was installing, this is a little like bear or a little dog toy that someone brought by while I was installing. They're like, "Oh, you want some things? Okay, here, I'll bring you this." Yeah, so this project really feels like it's a mapping of the last 4 months or 5 months. Yeah, and I guess so I've also shown my sketchbooks or the pieces that I was working on in my sketchbook while I was doing the residency. And for me, my practice is a lot in my sketchbook. I feel like it's the place where I'm the most honest, the most willing to experiment, the most willing to just like try shit out and really like enjoy myself. And so in my sketchbooks, I was right before I left Montreal to come here, I decided to try to do this practice of not keeping things too precious. Because with drawing, sometimes I can get very stuck in that like tiny little spot and I can't touch it. So I decided if I got to that point, I would white it out. So yeah, with this, I was drawing and then whiting out and going over, and it just sort of became this play in my sketchbook and then I would create these worlds. And I feel like how I was acting in my book really influenced how I acted with the sculptural pieces. I felt a little more sort of willing to try things that I hadn't tried before, or maybe do something that I didn't know if it was going to work or not. And that felt really, really good. And I really love the idea of having these tiny little, these worlds are so detailed next to these really large detailed worlds. Yeah, I think for me, I have a daily practice of drawing. Every day I have to draw. And I really think that these influenced this world a lot. And it wasn't really expected until I sort of stepped back and was like, oh, yeah, I'm sort of inspiring each other, the sculptures and the drawings. So the name So Damp, Them Three Bellies Grew a Whole Damn World came to me, well, I guess because I was panicking a lot about the name. And I was so set with that original project, and I couldn't get Bringing Home the Cold out of my head, and I was sort of like having a freak out about it. And then one of the teachers at Camosun was just like, meditate, chill, it'll come to you, it's okay. So I finally paused, and this was, a month or so ago, a couple months ago. And I was just flipping through my sketchbook, and that was something the name is something I had written with this picture in particular. And I thought it made so much sense too, because the wetness of the West Coast was such an inspiration for this project, and everything being all damp and wet and things growing all over each other. I just thought it made sense. So that's where the name came from. So I think that's sort of, all I can say about this project. I really hope that people come and check it out. Yeah, there's a lot more to come too in the future. Yeah.
But